Travis breaks down in tears. On a cool autumn evening, Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce were enjoying a nice supper at Taylor's house in Nashville. Soft country music was playing in the background, and the house was adorned with fairy lights that created a cozy glow. It was just the two of them, and for the first time, the pair didn't have to worry about public attention or cameras. However, Taylor immediately noted that Travis was abnormally silent. Her azure eyes were worried and piercing. "Travis, what is going on? All night long, you have been distant." Travis, who is usually full of energy, seemed to sag in his seat. I don't know why, but he took a deep breath and moved his food about the plate with trembling huge hands. "All I can think of, Tay, is the connection, the pressure, the attention. I know it's not easy, but we're in," Taylor said softly as she put her hand on his across the table. Together, all of this, not only that, but Travis gulped hard and blinked rapidly, perhaps to hold back his emotions. "There are moments when I think I don't deserve all of this since you're such a wonderful, accomplished, and gifted lady. Before I ever joined your wonderful life, I was frightened of spoiling it and of not being good enough for you." Seeing him so exposed shattered Taylor's heart, so she leaned forward and grabbed his hand even harder. "Regardless of what you have done or how you make me feel, I love you for who you are. You are more than sufficient, Travis. Never even entertain the idea that you are not a member of the team. That I can be myself and I want to be by your side no matter what." But he didn't seem to hear. Travis abruptly stood up and moved toward the window, his back to her, saying to himself, "I don't know if I can keep doing this. What if we never reach a point where we can just be happy without all the pressure?" Taylor stood up and slowly walked toward him. She placed her cheek on his back and wrapped her arms around him from behind. "We'll find our way, I promise." But the moment was interrupted by the sound of a vehicle pulling into the driveway. Taylor's father Scott Swift exited the car with a bottle of wine, knowing that Taylor loved his surprise visits. He could feel the tension in the room as soon as he walked in. Scott arched an eyebrow to make sure everything was okay, but Travis continued to face away from everyone, as if he was lost in contemplation. Although Taylor smiled somewhat, it was clear that she was worried about Travis. "Dad, we're all okay. Sometimes I'm afraid, I'm not sure if I can pull this off, and I don't want to hurt her." Scott walked up to give Travis a fatherly smack on the back, his eyes softening. "Son, can I talk to you for a second?" With his eyes flushed with a mix of rage and passion, Travis said. With a friendly yet serious tone, Scott placed a hand on his shoulder and listened. "Travis, you're different from the numerous others my daughter has dated. I've seen her develop into the incredible person she is now, and she's happy with you than I've ever seen her. Thus, if your worries are making you think about leaving, don't do it for her or for me, but rather because you're scared of what's good." Scott said, "Go ahead and take that step if you two are prepared. Don't worry about expectations. Just make sure you're doing it because it feels right for you both. I'll be the happiest father-in-law in the world when that occurs, but there's no urgency." After hearing Scott's remarks, Travis became silent for a while. Travis glanced to Scott as tears filled his eyes for the first time that night. "I don't want to mess this up, I love her so much," he remarked in an emotionally charged voice. According to Scott, "You're not going to mess it up, son, just love her with everything you've got, and the rest will follow." Scott hugged him gently but firmly. Travis drew back, wiping his eyes and nodding. Standing behind him, Taylor moved forward and wrapped her arms around both men, her heart overflowing with gratitude for the man who had just calmed her fears. "Many thanks, Dad." As they stood there in the cozy kitchen, the tension of the moment slowly subsided. "I'm pleased you two were there." With Taylor at his side, Travis was ready to take on whatever lay ahead because he felt he had learned something significant that night. Love wasn't about perfection, it was about developing, trusting, and holding on to the people who made you feel whole. When Tay's father brings up the possibility of a wedding, Travis begins to cry. It was a quiet evening in a little rustic cottage nestled in the woods. Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce sat together, enjoying each other's company in a rare moment of calm, where they had come to escape the prying eyes of the world, as the warmth of a crackling fire blazed across the walls. Usually, Travis, the confident, strong athlete, sat staring into the fire, his thoughts whirling with doubts about his future and Taylor's. What if she didn't think he was enough? What if the pressures of family, expectations, and celebrity were too much for their frenzied relationship to withstand? He is nudged by these doubts. "What's going on in that head of yours?" Taylor whispered as she leaned closer and put her palm softly on Travis's head after seeing a shift in his attitude. The groan, Travis combed through his hair. "I keep wondering myself, what if I mess this up? Because you need someone who can handle all that comes with being with you and me." Before he could say anything more, the giant football player, who had faced countless opponents in his career, was overcome with emotion. His breath was coming in quick spurts, and he wiped his face with the back of his palm. Taylor's heart is hurting. She caressed his face and triggered it. Travis, you don't need to be flawless or someone else in order for me to adore you for who you are. But in a trembling voice, Travis shook his head and said, what if who I am isn't enough? But what if I am unable to offer you the life you are due? I never thought I would get this deep. Taylor took his hand as they were holding each other and drew him into an embrace. Travis, you are sufficient. We're in this together, and you're more than enough. Never question that. A rap at the door shocked Taylor in the quiet warmth of the cabin, and she drew away slightly as she recognized her father. Scott Swift, standing at the doorway with a knowing look in his eyes, said, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we need to talk. Scott waved Travis aside with a reassuring gesture, adding, no need to apologize, son. Travis stood up and brushed away his tears, feeling embarrassed by his recent show of vulnerability. I've seen my daughter go through a lot of relationships, but I can tell you're different and I can see how much you care for her, Scott said with a smile. Taylor's father stopped and stared at Travis for a moment before continuing to search. I won't hold back. Being with TA is not simple. There are challenges to face, but there is also support and love. The most important thing is to be there for her, and I can sense you want to do that. When he stated, if you want to be part of this family, the most important thing is respect for her, for yourself, and for what you've got together. Despite his gratitude for his comments, Travis swallowed hard because he didn't want to let her down. The tension in the room seemed to be relieved by Scott's kind, paternal grin. When the moment is perfect, you two will decide whether to be married or not. With a sigh of relief, Travis nodded. I promise to do all in my power to make sure she's happy. Knowing that Taylor's father had faith in him and their future made Travis feel more resilient as the evening went on. With a smile on his face and a tear remaining in his eye, he sat back down and clasped Taylor's hand in his. The words, well, you're already doing better than most, were spoken quietly by Scott. Keep in mind that the goal of this marriage is to support one another through good times and bad, not to be flawless. The rest will follow if the two of you can do it. Because Tay never did, the fire in the cabin continued to burn brightly, symbolizing their unpredictable yet unwavering love. As his father discusses a possible wedding, Travis starts crying. It was one of those cold winter nights in Nashville when everything seemed so full of hope and excitement. It was a serene, almost surreal scene as Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce strolled hand in hand through the expansive gardens of her family's home. The aroma of pine and cedar filled the air, and lanterns softly illuminated the walkway. However, Travis's thoughts was anything from calm. Taylor looked up at Travis with worry and questioned, Travis, you've been so quiet tonight. What's going on? Her voice was gentle, but it was obvious that she could see the burden he was bearing. Travis paused, his heart pounding. He had never been one to show his feelings, especially not in front of those he loved, but tonight something inside of him broke. He had been considering marrying Taylor, and the idea of carrying on her family's legacy, especially her father's, felt overwhelming. Your family and friends all adore you, and then here I am, a guy from a football field trying to enter a world I don't even fully understand. I love you so much, but I'm afraid of failing you. I'm not sure if I'm enough for you, Tay. Travis acknowledged this, his voice cracking slightly. As if she could sense his thoughts, Taylor paused her stride and gazed into his face. Then she used her hands to delicately brush away a straight tear that had appeared in the corner of his eye. Travis, before Taylor could respond, he continued, just above a whisper, I don't want to let you down. She stated, you're everything I've ever wanted, you're the person who sees me truly sees me for who I am, and that's more than enough. But Travis was unable to shake the doubt. He wiped his eyes with the back of his fingers, and his shoulders drooped. He had never felt so vulnerable as he did now. Given the moment's vulnerability, Taylor's father was there. Scott Swift, who had been watching from a distance and knew that this was an important conversation and that it would be very burdensome for them both, came over with a cool smile. Scott stepped forward steadily and warmly. Travis, I know you're feeling overwhelmed, but you don't need to prove anything to me, son, he added in his sage and compassionate voice. Your love for my daughter is proof enough of who you are. I just don't know if I'm worthy of her, Travis said, and for the first time that evening, he could see the genuineness in Scott's eyes. With a kind grin, Scott touched Travis' shoulder. You're not meant to be worthy in some grand way, you're meant to be real, he stated. He is exactly what Taylor needs, someone who truly cares for her, supports her in her endeavors, and isn't afraid to admit his own shortcomings. I think that's more than sufficient. As the warmth of Scott's words surrounded Travis like a comforting blanket, his chest began to ease. He turned and gave Taylor, who was now standing beside him, a reassuring grin. In a stronger, more passionate voice, he continued, "You're my world, Tay," and said, "If you want a wedding, I'll do everything in my power to make it the happiest day of our lives." Taylor's smile widened as her heart grew larger with love for him. "Travis, all I ever wanted was a wedding straight out of a fairy tale. All I need is you, and that's all I need if we're working together. Marriage is about commitment, not grand gestures, and based on what I've witnessed today, you two have enough of it." Scott's eyes gleamed with a father's pride as he nodded in approval. A sense of relief washed over Travis. The future was more apparent than ever as the snow began to fall softly all around them. Despite the obstacles that lay ahead, Travis and Taylor felt they were prepared to face any situation together with the love and support of those who cared most. In that instant, surrounded by acceptance and love, he knew that he was prepared for whatever was ahead with Taylor, and his tears had transformed from despair to delight. "I believe we can figure this out." Travis spoke with a degree of conviction that he had never experienced before, his voice suddenly solid.